Today I'm going to tell a little bit about a game that has not been published yet. Battle for Stalingrad is on Kickstarter right now. I played only the prototype that was sent to me by the publisher, and so what follows is a preview of the game based on the prototype, and it is an unpaid preview. I'm not receiving any money for doing this. I wanted to play the game, and because I was curious about the game. This is a game about a topic that I'm interested in, the Battle of Stalingrad. I like the idea of a card game that deals with the Battle of Stalingrad, mainly because I played a game like that in the past, based on the same idea. That game was the Hell of Stalingrad, and I enjoyed the game very much, even though the rules were such a mess. But once you manage to will yourself through the rules, the game then worked. No problem here, by the way. Battle for Stalingrad by DVG, even now at the prototype stage, with the rules not final yet, works well, and it is easy to learn. The rules didn't present any problem. I spot a minor typo here and there. Nothing that really was a problem, not even a minor one, let alone a major one. In any case, the Battle for Stalingrad, two-player card game about the Battle of Stalingrad. Let me show you how you play the game. This is the game as it may look like at the beginning of the game. In the middle of the table you have 5 location cards that are chosen randomly from a deck of 9, so you do not have the same ones every game. Each location card shows you the location that the card represents. Of course, it may have extra instructions, extra abilities, but all locations have a small chart here that tells you the number of rations that that location produces depending on the number of rubble markers that are placed on it. When the location reaches a certain number of rubble markers, it is destroyed. You flip it to this side. The location doesn't produce resources anymore, doesn't produce rations anymore, but it still counts as a regular location for all other game purposes, and most importantly for control. And to win the game you need to control all 5 locations at the end of your turn. How do you do that? Well, first let me tell about the areas that surround the locations. You must imagine that each side of the line of location cards has a control area adjacent to it, a German control area and a Soviet control area. And right behind that there is a perimeter area for each player, so a Soviet perimeter and a German perimeter. If you have a unit in the control area of a certain location and the opponent doesn't have a unit there, then you control the location. Any other situation, no units at all, or both players have units, then the location is uncontrolled. At the beginning of the game, the Soviet player gets to set up first, and he can set up units in any of these perimeter or control areas. Then the German player sets up second, but he can only set up in the perimeter area of his side of the battle. Each player uses force cards that represent the units involved in the conflict, and those are the force cards that the 2 players have selected here at the beginning of the game. Each force card tells you the combat value of that unit, the starting rations that the unit receives when it enters the game, then you place a marker there for each ration that the unit has, and this is the cost of the unit. At the beginning of the game, players have 10 points that they can spend to create their starting army, and some units may also have some special abilities printed on their card, such as that one. But this is how units work. And then you have action cards, very important. Each player has a deck of action cards that are used during the game to generate effects. During your turn you can play an action card and resolve the text on the card itself, or you can use the card for its modifier on the top right corner, and that is the modifier that you use during combat. So you can play a card during combat for its modifier and you ignore the text, or during other parts of your action phase for the text and you ignore the modifier. A game starts with the German player taking a turn, and then players alternate taking turns until one of the players wins by having control of all 5 locations. During your turn, first thing, you get to resupply. You have a resupply phase. All of your units that are in the perimeter area will receive a ration, and then units that are controlling an area, that are adjacent to an area that they control, will receive resources from the card. And again, the number of resources that the card produces is printed on the card itself. And those rations, those supplies are very important because, well, you need to use them to do stuff with your units. Then, after the resupply phase, you have your main action phase, which is very free-form. There is a list of options, a list of actions that you can perform, and you can perform those in any order and any amount of times you want, as long as you have the resources that are necessary to perform certain actions. You could, for example, discard a card to produce 2 rations. That's one of your possible actions. You could recruit new units. Then you go through your deck of unused forces. You choose the one that you want to add to your side of the battle, and you discard a number of action cards equal to the cost of the card, and then you can add that unit to the battle. Or you can play a card for its effect, as I said earlier, or you can, and this is very important, move and attack with your units. Movement. There are several types of movement. They need to be kept separated because you need to pay for them separately. Each movement costs 1 ration to the unit that is moving. There are some units that are lucky enough they can move for free, but not many of those. A move can be from any control area to any perimeter area. So from there, you could move there or anywhere in your perimeter area. Or you could move from any location, it may be a control area or a perimeter area, to a control area which is uncontrolled, such as that one, for example. If you want to move to an enemy area, that is an area that is controlled by the enemy, then that is called an advance, and it is a separate action. So each of these moves, moving from control to perimeter, or from any area to an uncontrolled area, or from a perimeter area to the corresponding enemy area, those are all 1 point of movement, or 1 ration that you need to spend when the unit moves. And if you are adjacent to a location where the opponent is, then you can attack the opponent, but also attacking costs points. So for example, actually this unit can move without paying a ration cost, so that unit could move there for free, and this unit would have had to pay that to move there. When units are adjacent to enemy units, you can, in your turn, declare an attack. Each unit that attacks, however, has to spend a ration. In that case, that unit wouldn't be able to attack, but actually, if we were playing seriously, that unit would have received a ration at the beginning of the turn during the resupply phase, so it has a ration to spend. Looking at the situation, that wouldn't even be such a great idea. Probably we want to have some extra rations before attack, but this is just an example. When you are attacking, what happens? Well, you look at the total combat factor of your units, and then the attacker can start playing cards, and those cards may be positive, and those add to your own combat value, or they may be negative, and the negative penalty is applied to the opponent's total combat value. Then players can alternate playing cards until both players pass. So basically both players are trying to add to their own combat value and to reduce the combat value of the opponent. When both players pass, then you have the total value. Then there's a little bit of unpredictability because both players flip a card and they add it for its modifier to their total. So this other player would do the same. At that point, you take all the modifiers into account, and both players and attackers will have a number, a combat number, and that is the number of hits that inflict on the opponent. For example, here we have a total of 2 from the cards, from the units themselves, plus 4 from the cards. It's 6. But suppose the opponent played a -2, then the total combat attack for the attacker is of 4. Your total number, your final number, is the number of hits that you apply on the opponent. How can the opponent take hits? Well, the opponent can spend a ration to absorb a hit. Then each unit that retreats absorbs 2 hits. So for example, I would have already absorbed 3 hits there. Then I retreat this at the unit, and that would have allowed me to absorb 5 hits. Any hit that you cannot absorb thanks to expenditure rations, to retreat, or the game effects, well, that's bad, because that's a hit that destroys a unit. And this is really pretty much how it works. So during your turn, you will execute actions such as playing cards, moving, attacking, purchasing supplies, purchasing your units, and you go on like this until you decide that your turn is over. You have nothing else that you can do. At that point, you draw 5 cards plus 1 card for each location that you control, and turn goes to the next player, who goes to the same sequence. And players alternate like this until one of the players controls 5 locations on the board, on the table, on the floor in this case. I think you know what I mean. My conclusions today are about a prototype, so take them with a grain of salt. However, this is a prototype that I can tell you I find pretty convincing. I find it to be pretty solid. If the prototype is weak, then you have to hope that in the final production certain things can be fixed. I don't think they can worsen it much. I don't see what could happen here if Dan Verson gets drunk one night and messes up the design right before sending it to the printers. It doesn't sound likely to me. And as I said, unless something strange happens, the design is solid and the game, to me, works. This is a game that I enjoyed. I didn't encounter any particular problem. Actually, I found that the game had all of the things that I like about so many other games by DVG. You can see a certain family resemblance there. These are games that you can play in a single session. You do not need long setup. Games that you can learn easily, some very easily, some a little less, but they're still pretty accessible. And something that I really enjoy, DVG games, I find them to be very thematic, highly thematic. I find that this company really knows how to deliver a theme through the mechanics. And this is really what happens here. For example, the way in which the city, the urban landscape deteriorates during the game. It is gradual, it is effective, it does happen. Every time that you launch an attack, you add a rubble marker, which, come to think of it, I may have neglected to explain that in my main video, but you add a rubble marker there. Other cards, such as artillery barrages, will add rubble markers. The city will start crumbling. And as that happens, certain resources are not available anymore, but certain other tactical options emerge. There are cards that work in conjunction with rubble markers, so it is easier by playing those cards to take cover in an area without the rubble markers. You can block the streets using the rubbles. Tanks have trouble maneuvering in areas that have a high level of destruction. All these things make sense. They happen naturally as the game progresses. And the game presents you with tough choices, especially when it comes to hand management, which is great in a card game. And also about rations. Rations are a great resource, very flexible. Precisely because you can use them for so many things, then there are a couple of agonizing moments that you will have. You can use them to move, you can use them to attack, you can use them to absorb hits. Who is going to need them next? Who is going to maybe not need them so much, and you can leave those people without rations for a while. Definitely there are choices to make, and the choices, the flow of the game, the mechanics, the theme that is delivered through still an overall semi-abstract system. It is 5 cards on the board. It's not a very detailed map divided in axes. In any case, all of these things, the theme, the mechanics, the choice that you have, to me, come together well. To me, this is a game that works. again, I cannot guarantee everything because I cannot say this is the final game, but as a prototype, I find it a pretty convincing prototype. Definitely a prototype that makes me want to also play the final game. The prototype, well, not the prototype, the game is on Kickstarter right now. If you think this is a game that may interest you from what you've seen from this video and other sources available online, well, by all means, all you need to do is to go on Kickstarter, look for the page for Battle for Stalingrad, which is easy to find, and leave your pledge there. For today, this is all, and I hope you enjoyed my preview, my very first preview. I was pretty excited about this. My very first preview, which is for Battle for Stalingrad by DVG Games.